Well, Test Rugby is back as well as Super Rugby Pacific. We saw the Wallaroos get a massive win over Fijiana, but big news, it's the Tahs year back on. They get a drought-busting win in Canberra. The Reds have been humbled by the Hurricanes. The Four scrapped late by the Chiefs. It's all happening in Australian rugby. Welcome back to the Scrumbags Rugby Podcast.
We're hearing from the crowds that you're tough as woodpecker.
Apologising for kicking a drop goal.
Jorgensen, Max Jorgensen, no, he didn't! Oh my goodness me! Rush there, rush! He's got the record! Tom Wright, just too good! This is ecstasy for Wallabies fans!
If you're tuning in for the first time, we are the Scrumbags Rugby Podcast. We're the one-stop shop for everything Aussie rugby. My name is Lachie. My co-host Mitch is full of beans after an important Tahs win. But more importantly, we've got some big news on the merch front. Mitch.
We do. So if you're tuning into YouTube, you've got your eyes on this really nice piece of merch, the first official bit of Scrumbags Rugby merch that has come out. Unfortunately, not available to buy at this point. We're still in the development stage, but this is the first sample we've got. So for those tuning in on podcasts, I've got a really nice looking snapback white with the green Scrumbags logo across the front. It's looking really good, actually. We're really quite happy with how this product's faring. We've got a few other things in the pipeline as well that we're tinkering around with behind the scenes. So keep an eye out on our Patreon, on our socials, on all of those different platforms where we're at, because we should hopefully have these things available to buy very, very soon.
We're not the only ones making waves. The fantasy is going off chops. We've got new leaders up the top. You're faring pretty well, actually, in the tipping as well.
Yeah, so tipping comp on Super Brew, I was last week in 4th spot. I've now dropped down to 8th. I think that was because I backed the Reds, which was stupid of me last time I do that this year. So Toombs has taken top spot. We've had TJ Hump and stuff who's been up the top for the last sort of 6 weeks. So good to see Toombs, someone has taken the top spot away from Hump and stuff. But across in our fantasy, we've got Gip up in top spot, followed very closely behind by Teke Munches. So there's been a bit of change there over the past few weeks. Apologies that we haven't probably kept abreast of the results as much as we should week in, week out. I think it's probably been since week 4 or something that we've released these results, but well done to everyone there in both of those platforms. Let us know how you find the tipping and the fantasy comps. It's obviously something we run alongside our coverage week to week, but probably not as much of a engagement this year as we probably have seen in past seasons. So let us know if there's something else you'd like in coming seasons as we get into Wallaby season later in the year and Super Rugby next year. If there's something else you'd prefer, different platforms, why that engagement is lower than it has been, let us know. We're open to taking suggestions, and we want to be a podcast shaped by what the people want as well. So if you've got a different idea you'd like, if you want to see a fantasy comp run through Super Brew as opposed to the official fantasy platform, just send it through. Let us know. You can contact us through Instagram. You can contact us on X. You can contact us on Facebook or Patreon. There's lots of channels there.
Yeah, make sure you're checking out that Patreon as well. We've got some really cool stuff rolling out on Extra Time. It was great to have Maya Stewart on last week with Mitch to chat ahead of the Australia-Fijiana game. That's where we're going to start because that sort of headlined our weekend, a massive weekend of rugby, club footy back, Super Rugby. But our eyes are on Canberra for Test Rugby, where the Wallaroos, well, they finished up big winners, but it didn't always feel as comfortable as that final scoreline suggests. 33-15, 5 tries to 2 in the end, and a couple of penalties from Fijiana. But Mitch, what did you make of the Wallaroos' first hit out of 2026?
Yeah, I think to come away with a win is a positive. So first of all, we just need to be happy that the Wallaroos got the win and did enough to, in competitions, you sort of talk about fantasy points or bonus points. And so there isn't anything actually in terms of bonus points available in this one, but they did enough to secure that if there was that type of competition like Super Rugby Pacific. So first of all, to get the win, that's a big tick. Some new players, some new faces coming in and having some positive impact, some other faces that maybe didn't have the impact that we were expecting or were sort of wanting to see from them. But the other thing to take into consideration, it's been spoken about heaps. If you listened on Thursday, you would have heard my chat with Maya, and we were talking about the preparation that this week is, the fact that they don't have a season of Super Rugby to come into, that they've come in fresh, off and off season, into internationals, we probably saw that in the opening probably 20 minutes, that it seemed a little bit clunky from the Wallaroos. They definitely grew into the game, but also, to their credit, Fijiana also grew into the game and actually started to fire some shots late.
Yeah, I think we helped out with a little bit of coverage. I was working on rugby.com over the weekend, and it was great to see them get the results with the rust. And that's the perfect word that you used there. They were so clunky early doors. I think we saw a chance go over, M Chance. Funnily enough, it was the one who just fumbled it over the line. Maya Stewart not quite being able to link up with Brooklyn Techie Joyce on debut out in the left corner. So there were a few early ones, but the fly half on debut, Nicole Leddington, out of the Western Force, just split Fijiana for the first score. That was one of the great dummies and sells. And then she had the pace to go around it. I think that probably set her up for what was a sensational test debut.
Yeah, and I think that try is going to be replayed in highlights for years to come. I expect to see that little bit of passage of play highlighted for any Wallaroos game for the rest of the season. Just perfect, like in terms of not so much a team constructed try, but just individual brilliance. Like you said, the ability to step around the first defender, but then also once she's in space and through that line, the game knowledge and the awareness to actually then steer herself around the cover defense and go over and score the try. Like really, really good to be able to finish that off. We've seen in Super Rugby Pacific and other teams so far this year that when they make that line break, they don't necessarily finish it off as well. So to see her be able to do that, to make the line break, but then to finish off and score the 5 points, that's what you want to see out of your fly half.
Oh, fly halves that run. We certainly love to see it. And then she had a hand in the second try too, Mitch. She gets through the line, gets an offload away, and it sort of bobbles around. Eventually, Bridie O'Gorman's the one to pop it down. But still, so many signs of rust. And you're right, Fiji didn't go away. They did really well to claw things back through first a penalty and then a try to make it a 14-10 game at halftime. It was a bit squeaky bum stuff around there, plus the yellow card.
Yeah, it did feel at times like that. The Wallaroos were... Like, it felt as a Wallaroos fan and an Australian rugby fan, like the Wallaroos were in the driver's seat for most of this game. But as you said, like Fijiana came back and they got within 4 points and at halftime, and it was close. They were finishing hard and they had their opportunities. The thing that the Wallaroos were doing well was to actually to cut those opportunities off, the line breaks. There was a few, particularly in the second half, and one comes to mind where Fijiana makes a full line break and they run 60 odd meters. I think it was Desi Miller ends up taking down the centre from Fijiana and stopping that. But in times gone past, with Fiji teams, like you look at the Drua, you look at the Flying Fijians, when they make those line breaks and they get that steam up, they usually finish them off. So credit to the Wallaroos and their defensive scramble to be able to stop that opportunity. And yeah, I think discipline is something that we'll talk about a little bit more. There were some ill-disciplined moments from the Wallaroos. I thought that it was lucky, I think, that Brianna Hoy ended up only getting the yellow card. It probably could have been red as well. We've seen situations like that be given red cards, probably not so much in the Southern Hemisphere in 2026. It feels more like a Northern Hemisphere 2025 post-season situation where we're seeing red cards given out a little bit more willy-nilly. But yeah, clumsy to come across, and there's no intent in it. It was just accidental that she sort of collected the winger, I think it was, high. But yeah, it was a bit dangerous, and there was a time there where I was watching the replay and cinema thinking, geez, we could be in a bit of trouble here.
Yeah, I thought she might have been in a bit more curry, to be honest. Like, yes, body height was dropping, but she's clocked her square around the head.
Yeah.
Brianna Hoy's hands immediately went up, going, "Oh no, what I did was wrong." But eventually, 10 minutes, they did well to stay in the fight around. Then they did. I'm pretty sure they did concede the try.
They
in
did.
the wake of that to Carlita Yee, who was very impressive for Fijiana. But I think probably halftime came perfectly for Australia. They didn't have the momentum, and after the break, Sia Kapesi-Palu-Sakona comes out and goes beast mode. The skipper puts the team on her back, scores a try in those first 5 minutes of the second half, and starts restabilising things for Australia.
Yeah, and that's the sort of the impact we were expecting when we were doing our preview, looking at the way that the Sam Needs had structured his 23 with the impact from the players coming off the bench and coming on, like the Desi Millers and Kapesi Palu. That was it was good to see them come in, but I think, look, we'll talk. I guess the thing to come out of this game is, at the end of the day, like, it's the first test for the Wallaroos. it's the opportunity for some of these players to get minutes and to get a debut in the Wallaroos jersey for the first time. But their challenge doesn't get any easier now. I think they've got a internal trial next Saturday. I heard that spoken about in the week in terms of prep. So there's a next Saturday. I'm not sure where it is, whether it's in Sydney, it's in Canberra. I'm not sure. It's an internal full game trial that's being played, and then they travel to the US to take on Canada. And we know what Canada can do. We saw them in the World Cup last year. So it's not it's not an easy turnaround to go from a hard-hitting Fijiana team in Canberra on Friday night to then taking on this number 2 ranked team in the world, Canada, in America as well. And with travel components and the squad rotation and all those types of things, the Wallaroos need to make sure that they can get some of these areas under control, because if they give Canada the amount of possession and penalties and ill discipline that they did this week, Canada's going to eat them alive.
Yeah, completely different opposition, right? The class above, but it was great to see so many new faces, I think, get a crack for the Wallaroos. You mentioned the impact of the bench, and you're so right. Like Desi Miller, Georgia Friedrichs, Mac Leonard, Eva Kapani, all coming off the pint, adding heaps. But there was a lot to like from some of our other debutantes as well, like Britt Merlo got some good moments in. But I think the exciting one for me, Sydney Taylor at 13. She's coming across from the Sevens program. She played 80 minutes, sort of floating around the midfield, popped up on the wing a couple of times. She was crucial, especially over the ball defensively. She had a terrific game.
Yeah, and again, it goes to show the credit of having that Aussie Sevens program for the women's, and then the players that come in and transition. Like it's very rare that we have a player coming out of that Sevens program into the 15s that doesn't excel. And so you could see, like you just highlighted her there, that every time she had the ball, it felt like she was going to do something with it. Like it felt like there was a line break coming. She just had this assurancy with the ball. She was confident. She was diverting around players and setting up the players around her. Really key link player in this team. And to see the transition, like it seemed seamless. Like she didn't seem overawed, or she didn't need to know what to do or when to take her opportunities. Like she just, as soon as she got the ball in hand, she took the line on, and that's what you want to see from a 13, a big abrasive player who's willing to take on the players in front of them, take on the line. And that's what she did, to her credit. Like it's good to see that, and hopefully there's more players that will come across in future, because there's some players on the team sheet of that Sevens team, and I think we all know who I'm referring to, the Levi sisters. We can get them in a Wallaroos jersey later in the year. Like that puts our chances of getting a scalp, our first win against New Zealand, etc. It shoots that up dramatically.
Yeah, massively. And if you haven't had a listen to that extra time chat, it is on our main platform. So please go have a listen to Mitch's yarn with Maya Stewart. It covers a lot of this stuff. And of course, Maya Stewart had to have her say in this game. She extends her lead atop the all-time scorers. A great cameo. We mentioned her impact off the bench, but G-Fred lays on 2 try assists in the second half when she's introduced to the game. Desi Miller with a great rundown effort as well. But I really want to highlight Sam Wood. In the absence of Lane Morgan, who's gone across to NRLW, Wood preferred it last year's World Cup. Solid around the park, but you can't overstate that goal kicking. She is an absolute sharpshooter. Nailed all 4 of her conversions, was really important in ticking the board over. It's great to see that added, because as we'll talk about with games down the line, goal kicking has never been more important. So terrific to see her go well. Who else impressed for the Wallaroos from you before we move on to Super Rugby?
I'm going to throw my reverse card at you, Lachie, and get your thoughts on Faitala Maleka at 15. I think this is the first time, particularly from a Wallaroos perspective, that we've seen her in the 15 jersey. How did you think she went?
Yeah, it was a mixed bag for me. Typically we've seen Faitala sort of floating as the 10. She was Joe Yip's preferred 10 for a good while there. I think she's still a very effective ball runner, but a smaller frame. So it's different. It's a different prospect to having Caitlin Holes at the back, who hasn't been selected in this first squad as she manages her return to play. I like Maleka running the ball. She's really elusive. She finished up with a couple of great tackle busts, but she's not the same sort of physical threat as Holes. I like the kick option though. So I think we're going to see more of it, especially with Holes out of probably not going to be included in this pack 4. She might end up going on the tour. We don't know, but Leddington showed enough at 10 that I'd like to see her there again. Having Maleka create stability and allows us to carry another centre or another a winger on the bench. So I think Maleka showed enough, but I'm keen to get your thoughts on her performance too.
Yeah, I think it was a bit, as you said, hit and miss. The 15 is such a pivotal role in teams, and we've seen it in Super Rugby Pacific so far this season with teams when they've got, particularly like from a Waratahs perspective, say when they've got new guys there who aren't as assured and don't have that game knowledge and experience there, the team seems to struggle. And I mean, to their credit, the Wallaroos were able to overcome those early jitters and the disconnect between the back three. I didn't think it was as evident there as we've seen in some other teams this year. But you definitely didn't have the assurancy of a player who's an out-and-out 15, who's confident there, who's calling the shots and defensively setting up the defensive line. So, like calling a spade, Fijiana didn't really trouble defensively the Wallaroos as much as the teams that they're going to face in the next few weeks will. USA, Canada, and then into an All Blacks, the Black Ferns test. So there's still a little bit of work there, I think, from her. And look, actually, question for you: where's Laurie Kramer? Is she still hanging around the squad? I know she wasn't in the 23 this week.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I can't recall whether she was named in the squad. I'll have to take that question on notice, like we're in the Senate. But Laurie's got great experience there.
Yeah.
I still feel as though Tala is the great option to have, and always a player that you're going to have in your 23 when she's fit, because she can cover 10 and 15. Remember, she was the main kick option as well in this game too. So she does have a decent, but it's not quite the same length of kick as a Hulse or even a Hines for Tia, who's obviously on the 7th circuit at the moment. But there are enough signs for me that I would expect her to play 15 again against Canada and the USA, just to get some time and some additional sort of miles in the legs in that role. You need to have two kick options, because through the midfield, Ceci Smith, Georgia Friedrich, Sid Taylor, at the moment, those players that we're running with are not noted exits. And we know Desi Miller's got a big boot, but you can't always rely on it if she's on a wing. So potentially maybe there's a Miller to fullback move that could come up through this period. We know that's somewhere that she's played before at Tahs level, but there's all kinds of options. I think Tawa still heads them.
Yeah, I think, and Desi Miller is another one you just highlight there. Like, she's trained there, and she's trained, and if you follow her social media, you can see that she's always in that kicking group. So after training, she's always not knocking them over. And from what it appears, she seems to go all right off the tee. I'm interested to give her a shot. I think that's one thing in Australian rugby we probably don't do enough of, and that's across both genders, if that's what you want to call it, but both teams, the Wallaroos and the Wallabies, men's, women's games, is we don't seem to spread the kicking across players, and we just seem to give, this person's our kicker, so let's just give them the tee when we go for shots, and then they get injured, and all of a sudden you go to someone who isn't experienced and isn't as confident standing up and kicking to win a game. So I'd like to see Miller given that opportunity to see what she can do, and if that is another, second, third, fourth string goal kicker. I think just kicking in general is something for those fans who are more male orientated in terms of the rugby that they consume and don't watch a heap of women's rugby. Kicking is a big element of the game that's probably a little bit more important in some ways than what the men's game is, in that if you've got a team who can kick and kick well in the women's game, like that's a massive advantage to you, particularly in game, because you look at the likes of the Black Ferns and Canada and the USA, the teams that are at the top of the leaderboard when you come to World Cups or the top of the world rankings, they all have really structured and well-rounded attack. And that kicking is a big element of that. But when you start to go down to sort of the 5th, 6th, 7th ranked teams in the world, the kicking element drops off a little bit. And so if you've got a player who's confident and able to get you meters and give you really long, good line break clearances from the boot, then that opens up whole different areas of attack for you.
Oh, 100%. Like the three best teams in the world, England, New Zealand, and Canada, are immediately a headline by players like Holly Aitchison for England, who's a dead eye off the tee and in general play. Sophie de Goody is the sort of everywhere superwoman for Canada. And then you've got options like Ruahi Demont, Renee Holmes over the ditch. Like, they are all spearheaded by those exits. Typically, the women's elite game is faster, more free-flowing than the men's. There's more run. I love that aspect of it, but it is a weapon that we can develop if we can get players like Leddington, Maleka's got a big role to play in this. I would love a left foot exit in the Wallaroos. I'm not sure whether that's something that we have even at our disposal, but things like that can play such a big role down the line. So super excited for them to get the win. I think they're only going to get better from here, and stoked for the 6 new women who have pulled on a Wallaroos jersey. Super excited.
Fantastic. Well, let's keep moving, and we'll move into Super Rugby Pacific in our review there. The game that followed, the I guess dessert of what was the main feast on Friday night, is the Brumbies hosting the Waratahs. Now, if you listen to the podcast for the last few weeks, you would know that I'm a diehard Waratahs fan, but after last week particularly, I was pretty much off them, ready to put on my Reds jersey and just give up on everything New South Wales Waratahs. I'm back though, Lachie. The year of the Tahs back on. We've beaten the Brumbies in Canberra, and not only did we win, but at no time in the 80 minutes were the Brumbies ahead on the scoreboard. And I think that is a massive win for the Waratahs.
It's enormous. Like you cannot overstate how big it is for the competition as a whole, but for both these two teams involved. We'll start with the good for the Tahs fans. That is their first win in Canberra since 2018. It's been a massive 8-game losing streak.
And who was the coach? Stadium. Who was the coach of the Brumbies at the time?
Oh, funny you should mention. I actually think it was Bernie Larkham was coaching the Brumbies. Who was been coaching the Tahs? Oh gosh, is that Czech?
2018? No, it would have been.
No, he would have been Wallabies.
Gibson.
Gibson. Okay, there you go. So it's been absolutely ages. Jake Gordon's the last surviving player, and otherwise it was Falau Faingata and Lachie McCaffrey who are on the coaching side of things now. They were playing for the Brumbies, so it's just crazy. It's been such a long time, and the Hoodoo was busted last year with the Tahs beating the Brums in Sydney, but still, they'd only won one of the past 16 games against their fiercest rivals. So it was massive for them to get it done, and what a way to do it as well. I love seeing these tight games, 30-28, the Tahs leading the whole game, as you mentioned, and off the back of some incredible defense. Let me throw this stat very quickly at you. The tackles that the Tahs laid on in this game, they hit 249 tackles with only 20 missed at a massive high rate of just under 93%. And they fought so hard. They made all the dominant hits. You must have been over the moon, particularly with how they defended their goal line.
I think one of the things that I'm most impressed with the Waratahs this week was the scramble defense. Like, even though their defense just, their ability to get tackles and take the play to ground and stuff was good, it was when the Brumbies were on their try line and actually trying to get over the line and score tries that the Waratahs held them up like 4 or 5 times. And I think that was the turning point, that when the Waratahs were in the opposition, in the Brumbies A zone, they were actually coming away with points more times than they weren't. And so one of the things last week that was evident in the game against the Blues was the Waratahs, that first 40 minutes, had so many attacking opportunities. And whether that was from like just poor skill set, so like just dropping the ball into open space, or it was just not being able to actually get the ball down or evidently get the ball down. There's been a lot of talk this week that players thought they'd scored those tries and the TMO didn't have footage to award it, yada, yada, yada. But they came away this week and they got those tries. And so conversely, like if you're a team that can get into the opposition score, if you're a team that can execute your attacking opportunities, and as much as the Waratahs are creating at the moment, like they're creating a heap of attacking opportunities, they're still not finishing all of them off. They were still a little bit Jekyll and Hyde in attack, like we've come to expect from this season, but they didn't enough early to get good scoreboard pressure that I think put a lot of pressure on the Brumbies, but they're also defending well. And so that's what is this week particularly. We'll excuse last week and the last few weeks. The season starts now. But yeah, impressed with their scramble defense, in short.
Yeah. Oh, look. In total, it was the performance that they needed to have right there. To not labour the point, the Tahs season was going to go over a cliff if they lost this one. They had lost 3 games in a row. They were heading to a Canberra graveyard. They needed to do it, and they struck the first blow. It was a really fast start. Clem Halaholo goes over from tight range, and from there, I was so impressed with the scrap. You talk about the scramble defense, and they refused to give up. It took the Brumbies so long to finally crack through in that first half, and I think just the frustration started to boil over. So you mentioned the hold-ups over the line. I counted at least 5. There were probably more. And the highlight reel ones will probably be those 2 in the final 5 minutes. But I was so impressed with the way they were able to soak up pressure in that opening half and to go up ahead after the Brumbies had so much first half possession was incredible. So I love that they shot the lights out defensively. Miles Amatosero, who's we've given a bit of stick to already this year for obvious reasons, he had an absolute blinder. He did really good things. The defense got up and jammed really hard. He got penalised for cleaning out too hard at one point in the game. I'm not sure if he caught that one, but for a flush clean out, and they went, "Nope, can't do that." And I had no idea why that went against him.
Yeah, we'll come to that in a second. Look, I'm just going to put the brakes on just for a second, Lachie. Just go back to the start of this segment on the Waratahs. When I was throwing to you who was the coach in 2018, it was Dan McKellar for the Waratahs.
McKellar?
For the Brumbies, sorry. So that's why I was saying...
you're throwing me out there.
McKellar was the last coach the last time the Brumbies lost to the Waratahs, and now he's the coach of the Waratahs to beat the Brumbies for the first time since then. Anyway, it's interesting that Dan McKellar is the same guy in both of those little bits of history. But yeah, to come back to what you were saying, I actually think highlighting Miles Amatosero, I think he's actually been pretty good for the last few weeks. It's just that the Waratahs team around him have sort of been letting him down a little bit. He generally has done what he needs to do. He's the type of lock who, I think because of some of the off-field things that have happened in the preseason and because he's just so big that you see him do stuff more often. But both Amatosero and Phillip are the kinds of locks who kind of go about their business. And to be honest, like if you've got a lock who's playing well, generally you're not really seeing them do a heap. And that's the thing. Like you want a lock who's going to be doing the ruck clearances, the defense in the tight, hitting up those tackles at the pick and drives. Like they're the guys that do the unseen work. They're not necessarily getting over balls and getting pilfers. They're not making line breaks. They're not kicking for touch. They're not doing the flashy stuff. And I think both Amatosero and Phillip for the last few weeks have been pretty decent in just doing what they need to do. And the line out to the Waratahs' credit has been pretty solid for the last few weeks. A few throwing issues, I think, with Folau Fangata coming in and out of the 23 the last few weeks, but generally I think it's been pretty solid. So, yeah, to their credit, I think those guys have been solid. It's some of the other Waratahs players defensively around them that maybe have let them down and made them look a little worse than they have been.
I just think that they just toiled. The whole pack toiled. I was really impressed with the whole Waratahs pack. Defensively stands out for me because they did so much of it. Like Miles is leading that tackle count. Clem Halaholo, Jamie Adamson, Daniel Botha, they're all making 20-plus tackles, which was really good, and sticking them too. But just the ability to slow down play, their attacking clean was really effective, especially to get rid of those dangerous players over the ball like the Rory Scotts, the Billy Pollards, the Luke Reimers. They didn't have the same impact that they usually have in a game. So that's a hats off to whoever's looking after that attacking ruck and particularly their defensive work. I was super impressed with them. But I think that the highlight for me, and I'm sure we'll have lots to say about this man, is Sid Harvey. We gassed him up. We gassed him up last week with his performance at fullback. He's been very solid since coming in and debuting a couple of weeks ago against the Hurricanes in a tough loss. But seeing a fullback who can kick goals, he had a couple of drop balls in attack, but he was so assured off the tee, finishes 6 from 6, and watching him systematically dismantle the Brumbies crowd and watching their hopes fall off the tee from the 65th minute to the 75th, that was good. That felt good, and I didn't have skin in the game.
Yeah, it's always good to go to Canberra and keep the 6,000 people, 4,000 people there quiet. No, like to his credit, like he's come on leaps and bounds in these past few weeks. Like we're all talking in Australian rugby about Declan Meredith being, a smoky for the Wallabies 10 jersey, all of this sort of stuff. I hope that when people don't start talking about throwing Sid Harvey into the 15 jersey or into contention for the Wallabies, but like to his credit, like he's not putting a foot wrong at the moment, and he's only 20, 21, if that. And he's just like, he's going up against some of the game's best and he's not looking shy. And I think what is so pleasing from a Waratahs attack perspective now is one thing. Last week I was very critical of their decision making, particularly late, and the game management and the nous of, do we kick, do we run when you make those decisions. This week the Waratahs made the right decisions at the critical times, and having someone like Sid Harvey to give you the assurance of, okay, we've got a penalty, there's 2 minutes on the clock, we're up by 5, let's kick a penalty here to go ahead by 8 to put it out of reach, and he nails it. Like, that gives you so much more confidence to just apply scoreboard pressure, because I think in weeks gone past, it's been evident that the captain at the Waratahs, Philip, at the time, maybe just isn't as confident with his 10 of saying, do we have the opportunity to get this 3 points? Like, are we going to nail it if we take it? Let's just go to a scrum or a maul, because we're pretty confident in that. And most of the time they've turned that over. So to have someone like Harvey that is going to step up and kick 6 from 6 in a game, like that'll keep them in games, and it'll get them wins like it did this week.
And it did. You were so critical and rightly of Phillips' game management these past 2 weeks, not getting the bonus points, not taking the threes on offer. With the game at the balance at 21-all, after Lachie Shaw scored his second try to lock things up, the Tahs very could have easily, in the position that they were with 15 minutes to play, go, nut, we're playing down this end of the field. We need to keep down this end of the field, and we need to score tries. Because it was not a gimme 3. That first one was not a gimme 3. He's 45 out on his non-preferred side. The crowd was heckling him, and he absolutely flushed it. So that gave him the confidence to then drill another 2 from 40 plus out and break it out to 9. It was so quick. The accumulation of points was so quick, and it sucked the oxygen right out of the Brumbies and GIS Stadium. As soon as it went beyond 2 scores, you just felt like even if the Brumbies pushed it late and scored a try, which they ended up doing, the Tahs had enough, and that control, that game management has been lacking the past few weeks. It's so good to see the Tahs be able to put that into action when it really matters, when their season's on the line.
Yeah, it is. As a Waratahs fan, like I must admit, I'm sitting here still scratching my head at how they won that. Like, I was expecting to tune in at see the score at halftime to be like 15-30 to 6 or something. Like, I was just... It was a monumental effort from the Waratahs. I think one thing I said on the pod last week, I think it was on the pod, maybe it was even on preview, was that if there's one team and there's 1 week to be a Waratahs fan, it's this week, Brumbies week, because McKellar knows what he needs to do to go to Canberra and win. And that was evident. Like, I think the Brumbies were out-coached this week, and we'll get to that in a second when we flip the discussion and start talking a little bit about the Brumbies. Not all of that was necessarily the Brumbies' fault. Like, I don't think it was so much that that Larkham didn't have the team primed and ready to go, although he did speak about it in the post-match. There were some refereeing decisions that I think kept the Brumbies out of the game at crucial times. But Dan McKellar knew what he needed to do to get the Waratahs up, and you could see that they were up for it, that they were intent, that they were just clinical in the way that they approached the 22 in the A-zone this week, whereas in weeks gone past, they've got themselves there, but they just haven't finished it off.
Which refereeing decision or decisions in particular did you have in mind for keeping the Brumbies
Decisions. Where do we go with this? I think that the Brumbies were blown out of the game by some refereeing and breakdown decisions by Angus Gardner that were frankly bullshit. And as a Waratahs fan, I'll sit here. As a Waratahs fan, I'll sit here and take it. But there were a few times in this game where Angus Gardner was giving reasonings why he wasn't awarding the pilfer that I have never heard a referee give that justification, and it's not in the law book anywhere. So there was a fair few times where the Brumbies back row particularly, like, were getting so hard over the Waratahs ball. I was like, that's a clear steal. Give them the penalty. And he's calling them off it. And it's like, I can't reward the pilfer if you have a defender in the tackle zone. So what he's basically saying is the tackler has taken the player to ground, and then the pilfer's come straight over the top and won the ball. But because the tackler is still in the channel, he's not rewarding the pilfer, which, like, what law does it say anywhere that the tackler can't, like, there's been no decision or correlation in the past between winning the breakdown as the pilferer, as the jackler, and then your tackler being in the area.
Yes,
Does
yes,
that make
there
sense?
is.
What I'm saying?
No, it makes sense, but like the call there is that the tackler hasn't rolled away. So regardless of whether he has impacted the attacking team's ability to clean out a jackler, if you haven't rolled east-west and got out of there, it's very Ben O'Keefe. Do you know what he's like? If you make the tackle and you don't roll away instantly, he's like, bang, penalty. It felt similar in this game. Angus Gardner sees that one. I think that there was a big one late in the piece that you're highlighting. I think it was Luke Reimer getting over the ball, but Charlie Carl hadn't rolled out of the way of the tackle. And instantly, even though Reimer had rights to it, because there's still a body in the way that is impacting the first clean attempt, they're going, nah, penalty. I don't necessarily agree with it, but that's been pretty standard. The really egregious one that I want to get your thoughts on is that jackal from Caden Pritchard in the lead up to Joey Walton's try, because the whole crowd from that moment on was so against Angus Gardner. Every decision was met with derision, with howls, because that's the breakaway, sparked by Jorgensen linking up with Deb Rossini, and then Deb gets taken to ground. Pritchard is on him like a rash, probably for about 2 seconds, which is an eternity in rugby. And the whole of GIO Stadium could not believe that they were allowing Jack Debrassi to take an extra roll and then place further back under attention. I think that's the one that really got people fired up.
Yeah, look, I think if you go back and actually watch that and slow it down, the reason why I was fine with that being play on, and actually Justin Harrison confirms it in the call if you listen to it, is that Pritchard actually doesn't go for the ball. He just grabs Debrasini's back. And so you can't be awarded a pilfer if you're not on the ball. You have to have clear lift. And so you can't just grab the player on the ground and then be like, I'm holding. Where's the release? There's no release if you're not on the ball. And so that's what happened. I think you probably, if you sort of slow it down and go to the TMO, you possibly could have penalised Debrasini for I don't know if he took a full-on extra roll, but he definitely had a second movement that stopped Pritchard getting over the top and getting on the ball. But yeah, I think for the most of it, Pritchard actually wasn't on the ball, he was on the player. And so it's not actually a turnover, it's not a jackal in that situation. So I think it's probably gamemanship from both sides. If Pritchard actually gets on the ball, then he takes away the 50-50 call, and then the referee's forced to give a penalty for not releasing. Whereas at the same time, it's gamemanship from Debrasini because he did just enough to slow down and wait an extra second for the defense to get there, and then they end up spinning it wide. So that call I was actually okay with in real time. It probably could have been gone, it was 50-50, could have gone 50-50. Either way, like I just said. But yeah, I did feel sometimes, I get what you were saying in your justification for what he was saying in certain times, but I just felt like that in this game, there were clear moments where the Brumbies, the jackler, had beaten the ruck. He had gotten over the ball before Waratah's defenders were there, and justification for not rewarding that was that there was still a tackler in the channel. And not that the Brumbies players were actually loitering, but just that they were still there. And so I think that's a difference between... it wasn't like the Waratahs had gotten there and were trying to clean out, say Reimer was over the ball and they were trying to clean out and they couldn't because there was a Brumbies player lying in the channel. In my mind, the way I was viewing it was that they had actually beaten the ruck. They were the first player there, as Reimer so often does. And in other games, that's a penalty to the Brumbies, and it has been all season. And for whatever reason this week, Angus Gardner was choosing not to reward that, which that benefited the Waratahs so much that it almost meant that the Brumbies couldn't attack the breakdown at all. And that's one of their key strengths.
I wonder if this is a case of more recency bias, and not from you, but in general when we look at this game, because overall the Waratahs gave away more penalties. They conceded 14. A lot of them coming at the breakdown, which was fairly even. But in the second half, there were some really big ones, and because it was a 6-3 count after oranges against the Brumbies, perhaps that's why it felt like Gardner was blowing them out of the game, because it was happening sort of as the seconds ticked away, and with the accumulation of points from Harvey's boot, it did feel like the Brumbies were really frustrated that they couldn't get any go forward. But it's also execution as well. Declan Meredith had his quietest performance of the season so far. It's funny how these things come after so much hype and chat around other people talking, is this guy the next Wallabies? Well, he's dropped a game at home and couldn't stamp himself, this is the reason why, that he's not going to get parachuted straight into a gold 10. And just little handling errors and maybe poor exits. I still feel they're really missing a good kick option.
I think like the other thing you have to take into account is just the macro elements of this game is that this is the Brumbies, what is it, round 8? Round 7?
Round 7, yep.
And they haven't had a bye yet. Like the Waratahs had a bye in round 3. So they've had a break. Their players are rested. They've had squad rotations, whereas the Brumbies have had a heap of travel and they have had 7 games on the trot. Like Larkham mentioned it in the post game that the bye comes at a perfect time for them because they're gassed. And that he said we need to go back and review our systems because I think we cooked the players too much this week. And so they came into this game fatigued, and they already brought in a heap of fatigue because they've played for 7 weeks straight. And like no fault of the player's own. I think when you add that element into it, that they're cooked and they're tired, you then got a Waratahs team who's coming to town with a heap of your former players, your former coach, their seasons on the line. Like there's a heap to play for there. The Waratahs were up for it, and the Brumbies, unfortunately, not that they weren't up for it because they're also playing for slips. It's another record for him, but you could tell that they were fatigued and they were tired, and they'll be better for the break. So yeah, look, I'm coming on here trying to be as complimentary towards the Brumbies as possible, not just put the knife in and turn it as a Waratahs fan. It's great that they come out of the win. But I actually said to my wife about 10 minutes from full time, I was like, this result is actually shithouse for Australian rugby. This is not good for anyone because the Waratahs, realistically, they won't play finals. And if they do, they'll bow out in a semi in Auckland or Christchurch. Like they're not going to win the comp this year. We all know it. They've been so inconsistent. The Brumbies need to be winning these games, and to now have dropped 2 games against both the Reds and the Waratahs at home, where it's so important to get those home victories, like that's going to hurt them in the long run. They've now dropped on the table they've retained first, but the gap leading into this was much bigger. So they're in 3rd, the Reds are in 4th. The Brumbies are currently on 20 points. The Reds are on 18. They needed to keep that gap and to stay in the top 3 as long as possible. For the fact that they've now got a bye, they don't get any points next week. All these other teams have played and had byes. The best thing for Australian rugby was for them to win and probably win well with a bonus point. But, as a Waratahs fan, I'll take it.
It's such a strange situation and such a familiar one for the Brumbies. They've done all the hard yakka. They beat the Crusaders in Christchurch. They've done the Chiefs and the Blues late. So like possibly the top 3 teams in a lot of people's ledger, and they've managed to get big wins over them, important wins, and then they drop the local derbies. Like they would
what is that?
Furious. And it was so close as well. Like I can always forgive teams going down to the Drua in Fiji. It's just like, it's a coin flip game as we've discussed, but to lose it in overtime against the Reds, Carter Gordon going over, to lose this one by just 2 points after conceding 3 late penalty goals, like they should be top of the table. They will be absolutely spitting chips. And if this is what loses them the chance for a home semi-final and we get the exact same rinse and repeat New Zealand top 4 game that they go down in, it will just be so frustrating for Brumbies fans. You can understand why there's so much annoyance. But in the same token, we want 3 teams in finals. We want 3 Aussie teams in finals. Ideally, we get 4, but the Force aren't in a position to get there.
Well,
this keeps the...
Do we? The question is, at this point of the season, what are we? We're nearly halfway. Next week's halfway, or...
Yep.
This week's halfway, whatever it is, next week. Would you rather at this point, you can't have both. Don't give me the I want both answer. Would you rather have a home semi-final for the Brumbies or 3 teams, or Brumbies, Reds and Tahs all make finals, just regardless of where they make it?
I'd rather 3 teams.
No, I don't think so. I don't agree with you. For the sake of Australian rugby, you can have 3. That's fine. I'm just saying I don't agree with you. I'll get your justification in a second. But like for so long, that's the narrative of Super Rugby. We get the Waratahs will scrape in 6, and the Reds will go to Hamilton and get smashed by the Chiefs, and the Brumbies will play a home semi-final against the Hurricanes, and they'll win, and then they'll go to Auckland week 2 and lose. Like that's the narrative. How many years on the trot has it been that the Brumbies have lost a semi-final in New Zealand? 4?
Yeah, I'd say so. At least 3. It's since Super Rugby went Pacific, right? But
Yeah.
look, like we want more Aussie teams in the finals. Yes, I want the Brumbies to finish as high as possible. I also want the Reds and the Tahs and the Force to finish as high as possible. Ultimately, I think that more teams means more coverage of us in finals. If the Tahs get to the finals, the Sydney market is so important for the way that media covers rugby in Australia. Like if you are dominating in Sydney, you dominate the headlines. This is not me bandwagoning for the Tahs. I obviously hate the Tahs, but it's a good thing if they win and they drive
Well, you can't.
interest.
There's a crack there, Lachie. It feels like you're starting to bleed a little bit blue, mostly red, but a little bit blue. Your microphone's blue.
Varying shades. There's we just want coverage, right? Like we're right in the middle of NRL season. Aussie rules is going on. It is such a tough market to crack. We have the most competitive sports market in the world. Ergo, we need the Tahs to start doing good things. That's why I'm pleased with this result for them. Obviously, a blow to the Brumbies' hopes, and now they've just got to really do some navel gazing over the bye week and get themselves up for a big finish. We know that the Brumbies have a favourable run home. We know that the Tahs don't. So huge tests coming up now. I think the Tahs go over to Hamilton after this. That's going to be absolutely massive because we saw what the Chiefs were able to do against the Force and do what they need to stay in touch with those top two, top three.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. I am conscious of time, so we need to speed things up. But these last two games probably don't have as much to talk about. Look, the only thing I'll say to that, I know that we're talking about coverage for Waratahs and they need more and X, Y, Z. But look, the win from Saturday night, I live in Sydney. I've seen next to nothing from it. Like I'm not seeing, I don't even know who it would be that would report. I'm not seeing like a random channel. I'm not seeing Channel 7 talking about the Waratahs win. I'm not tuning into 2GB or any of the radio stations that roll through on a Sunday morning. Oh, these are the results from the weekend in the AFL. So-and-so won. And in the NRL, the Bunnies beat so-and-so and the Bulldogs lost to the Knights and this. And in Super Rugby, the Waratahs beat the Brumbies. Like, you don't hear it. They just don't talk about the Waratahs. And this would be the week you'd think that they would. And they're still not. So at the same time, I get what you're saying. But I feel like just the Sydney market in general, like for me as a Waratahs fan, I don't think there's any benefit for the Waratahs to scrape into a final and go and lose like last year. They scraped in 6. No, last year they didn't. The year before, sorry. Yeah, the year that they did scrape in 6, they went to Auckland, they played the Blues, and they got smashed by like 40 points. Like that's not beneficial to anyone. That's not beneficial to the Waratahs. I would much prefer the Waratahs miss out, or they finish 4th and actually give it a real crack and make a semi-final and lose there. I think that's more of an outcome. I would prefer that than the Waratahs scrape through, make up the numbers in the final and a cannon fodder for whoever they play week 1.
So what you're saying is that they should have lost this game, let the Brumbies go up and continue merry on their way.
They shouldn't have lost. Like at the end, if it was tight, like they shouldn't have just turned down the opportunity to go for sticks, like at the end of the day. But I think the best outcome for Australian rugby is the Brumbies win this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's nice. It's nice to see some competition. Like it's been such a one-sided affair watching the Brumbies and the Tahs for so long, and it's good. I think it's a good thing ultimately without skin in the game because we needed an Aussie win. Thank God we had a derby because the other two games we got absolutely the Force did not get flogged. They did very, very well. The Reds, however, we can bury that conversation because that was just a short.
We will get to that in just a second. My last point, and again, I'm flipping the coin all over the place, so forgive me. I don't know where I sit at the moment. I'm just shocked from the result. But the Waratahs are now the best team in Australian rugby. They smashed the Reds week 1. The Reds then went on to beat the Brumbies at home. And then
they're just flip-flopping all over the shop. It's terrible that the Brumbies didn't win, but the Tahs the best, even though they're not going to play finals. What's doing?
Yeah, that's where I don't know. I don't know where I sit right now.
We got to have faith. We got to have faith in our teams. And oh God, I think we just need a break. The Brumbies need a break. They need to get back on the horse a bit later on. But I think it's a good thing for the Tahs ultimately.
Okay, let's move on. What happened in Wellington, Lachie? The Reds went down. Not only did they go down, they got absolutely punched in the nuts against the Hurricanes.
Yeah, this one can be a short one. I think that both of us had a pretty clear expectation laid out that the Hurricanes were going to win this. We said that a bonus point would be a win. A bonus point is a tick for the Reds, and at halftime it looked good. They had survived a couple of favourable calls. It could have been 31-7 at halftime after sort of a ricocheting kick could have got the Canes even further upfield for their fifth. That was called back. They scored late on the half with Isaac Henry, 10-point buffer at halftime. The second half was just a good old-fashioned shit fight from the Reds. Yes, the Canes are incredible. They took all their opportunities, a couple of intercepts, a couple of loose balls, and they go the length. But the Reds threw nothing in the second half. There was great physicality in the first, but it's clear that there is still a gulf from this Queensland side when it comes to taking on the big teams across the ditch. And for me, it was just as much a showcase of how good the Canes are as how much the Reds still have to learn about staying in these big games. It just looked like they gave up a little bit in the second half.
Yeah, I guess it's worrying from the Reds in terms of like a mental perspective. Like when the Canes got ahead on the scoreboard and they looked dominant from like the second minute, the Reds kind of like, as you said, to their credit, they stuck in there in the first half. They still threw some shots. They still shut down some opportunities. But as the tide really did turn in the second, they went into their shells and they stopped. They went away from their structures and they kind of just gave up. And that's concerning because even if there's so much talk about the Reds being title contenders, the best team in Australia, that we want to see them go well this season, this was a potential final. Like if you're talking about actually going and winning Super Rugby, this could be the final. At the moment, it's Hurricanes, Crusaders, and at a stretch, probably the Chiefs are the three sort of in-form teams that you are expected to play in a final. And so you need to show up and show up well against them. And they didn't do that.
No. And give up's probably the wrong term because they still managed to hold on to the ball. They had the lion's share of territory and possession, particularly through the second half, but they could not handle the counterpunch. And that's where the Hurricanes thrive. They thrive in the loose ball, the scrap. A great example of this, the second try that they score in the first half, Filippo Darguno comes up from set piece and lays on a huge hit on Geordie Barrett. It's the kind of hit that gets a crowd off their feet, momentum shifter, yet Barrett has the presence of mind, even though he's been smoked, to pop the ball. They get a quick recycle, and the Reds just did not defend their edges well. The Hurricanes cut shreds through them. Finney Anganofo with another hat-trick. Barrett, Morby, Love, Roygard, they just had a field day. And when you've also got wide runners like Armour and Warner Dearns who can do crazy things that Ford shouldn't be able to do, it just became a rout. And that's what the Hurricanes are so good at. If there's a crack in the damn wall, they put all their energy behind it and push through, and they blow out games. The Reds couldn't contain it. They've got some real soul searching to do, particularly as to how they defend their edges. I think you can't understate how important Josh Fluke's defensive work has been for the Reds the past few years to lock down the 13 channel. And Isaac Henry's great. People are high on him. I'm high on him. But he didn't have the same connection to the edges. And with Filippo Darguno biting in off his wing or trying to come in for a big hit, it created opportunities. And the Canes are too good a side to not exploit those. And ultimately, the Reds got cut to ribbons.
I think one of the things as well for this Canes team at the moment, like they were so good, and they have been so far this season, but this was their first test. And they've passed with flying colours. Like, if you look through their season, and that's what I was just doing as you were talking through there, like, we're around 7. They haven't played any of the other top 4 teams in the comp yet. They started with Moana, then they played Fiji, then they played the Tahs. Well, they had a bye first week, sorry. So they've had a bye straight up. They've played Moana, Drua, Tahs, Force, and now this week they play the Reds. And so the Reds are probably the best that they've had to, and the Highlanders, sorry. They've played the Highlanders too, and they smashed them. So the last 2 weeks they've played the Highlanders and the Reds, and they've put 50 points on each of them. And so that's crazy to consider that, like, they've not played the top teams in the competition, and their first time that they come up against one, they still put 50 on them.
And that's exciting. And I love the progression that they're going to have through their season. We'll get a real sense of how good they are when, for example, they take on the Crusaders, the Blues, who are running really hot. Like, those are the really big games for them, but it's almost the perfect runway for their season. Like we talked about preseason, how the Tahs had a sort of gilded draw. I think the Canes possibly had the best of all, despite the first week bye. They've just been able to have this incredible runway. So very excited to see that the Canes can be a top contender, even with our Aussie hat on. Anyone but the Crusaders for me at this point to win a comp. So it's good to see them firing.
I mean, I guess the only positive takeaway from the Reds is like you, as we said in the preview, like we all expected them to get pants, and they did, and so to come away with the losing bonus points, the best possible outcome. But really, like they can, it doesn't derail their season to lose to the Canes in Wellington, and so
No.
they can still build from this. So it's not like season's over. You kind of said in the intro the Reds season's over. Probably a bit of hyperbole there, but the fact is like the Reds can recover from this. It's not end of season stuff. Everyone is finding it difficult in this competition this year to contain this black line that the Canes have. Like their ability, like you were saying, to just run around players and to just get it to a wing and go over wingers. Like if I was playing the Canes next week, and no one is, they're on a bye again. But if I was a winger facing the Canes next week, I definitely would be having tight hammies in the lead up.
Yeah, I'd just be feeling a little ginger, a little sore. Like they were so good, and with Love pulling strings, Roygaard's always a running threat. There is not a player in that back line that can be considered a weak link. It's so good. So it's kind of a wash this one off for the Reds. I think the fact that they racked up so many points in the second half is disappointing when the Reds had and did good things in the first half. They were physical, they carried stronger. Salakai Lotto did some really good things with ball in hand, so did Dalgunu, but I think they were gassed, and they looked at this on the call as well. They were like, this Reds team's run out of steam. They're running out of steam before halftime, and they couldn't kick on. The Hurricanes have another gear, and it just shows that there is a gulf between the contenders, and I think the Reds at this stage have not proven themselves to be a contender.
Mm. And I mean, the other thing to consider as well is the Hurricanes have had like the worst run of injuries as well from a Super Rugby team. Yeah. Maybe only worse so than the Crusaders, who have like an All Blacks team out injured at the moment. But on top of that, like they have not had, that hasn't impacted them at all. And so that's scary to consider the talent they've got on the sideline that's still yet to come back for them. Let's keep moving though, because I am conscious of time, and we've got one more game to go and one quick talking point I wanted to highlight with you. And that was the Force hosting the Chiefs. Now, this one, the result this week was 20... Well, let me get it up. Was 24-14, which, you know, isn't a massive score from the Chiefs. And at a lot of times in this game, it actually felt like the Force did enough to at least get a losing bonus point. Again, they haven't managed to, in these tight encounters, get a losing bonus point, which is got to be so frustrating for Simon Cron and his coaching staff.
I'm devastated they didn't get that bonus point. They deserved it. And while we complimented the Tahs for their game management, I think that you need to be critical of the Force's game management after Ollie Norris cops a yellow card at 65th, 66th minute of this game, maybe even a bit later on, and the scores are 21-14. It's right in front of the sticks. The Force, I believe, should have just banked 3 points, got themselves to within a bonus point, and backed themselves to use the man advantage to get out of their territory and go in for the kill, go in for the win. It feels like the moment in this game when Ollie Norris was sent off and they couldn't cash in on the man advantage. So disappointing there, but they were so good. They really fought hard. They tackled the lights out. One of the people we talked about in our extra time preview, Champion de Crepney, like, is this the game that he goes to another level? I thought he did. He did some excellent work in defence. Probably not the same threat we want over the ball or with ball in hand, but he did so many good things. Beale and Bridge worked hard. Dono was solid, but the Chiefs just too classy, too late.
Oh, yeah. And like, I guess one thing about this Chiefs team this year is like they actually haven't looked as threatening and as impressive as they could do. Like when you look across their backline and some of the players they've got, Narawa, McKenzie, Love, no, not Love, Rowe, Xavier Rowe at halfback. Like they have out and out All Blacks players who can just do something from nothing, and they're not necessarily clicking that well in defense, in attack. Sorry, they coming into this game, like I was expecting this to be like 30-5 or something, and the fact that the Force were able to hang with them so well and for so long was a real credit to them. That they kind of shut down what the Chiefs were doing. I think one big impact from the Force's perspective was losing Carlo Tizzano at halftime.
Yeah,
like that,
massively.
That hasn't been looked at, but that was a really dodgy clean out that he got copped. His knee was already strapped coming into the game. I think it was Josh Jacob comes through and cleans him out and takes him out at the knee, just offside the side of a ruck. Not needed. But looking at the stats, like in that first half, Carlo Tizzano made 15 tackles and didn't miss one. Like 15 tackles in one half. And like you compare that to Jeremy Williams, made 15 tackles the whole game. Darcy Swain made 12. Nick Champion de Crepney, to his credit, like we were saying before, comes on and plays the second half and makes 23. Like those two together, defensive, just incredible defensive effort. But I think not having him on the field it did impact them a little bit.
Oh, not just a little bit, a lot. Like it was highlighted. Nath William did a good analysis piece in the wake of this game, like very much the so close so far for the Force. But losing him meant that they had no genuine on-ball threat because he is the only genuine on-ball threat. You know, yes, hookers and back rowers can. All
BPA goes at it from time to time, but
yeah, but it's chalk and cheese to Tizza. That is his bread and butter, and they only finished with one pilfer for the night. That's coming from Henry Robertson. So when you don't have that threat, the Chiefs could afford to not throw as many people into the breakdown. It meant they had more fresh forwards to carry and more options in the back line. Ultimately, it was weight of possession. They had 60% of the ball, 58 of territory. They were always going to have too much at the end because they had gassed the Force defensively.
Yeah, and as good as Nick Champion de Crepney is, and the fact is he comes on and makes more tackles, like he's a very different type of player to Carlo Tizzano. Yep. And like he's almost like a six kind of, he could play lock at a pinch too. Whereas Tizzano is just an out and out 7. So as good as he was there, I'm sure people will be highlighting the fact that, oh, you just said that they lost Tizzano and Crep came on and did better, but he doesn't do the same type of stuff as Tizzano does. And having them both on the field at the same time was probably going to be the plan. And the fact that they lost that at halftime was disappointing for them. Hopefully, touch wood, that Tizzo's all right and he hasn't picked up a bad injury from that. I haven't heard yet, but that he's in such good form at the moment. Like we want him on the field. We don't want him having an injury on the sideline.
No, watch and see on him. He's been awesome. And just I know that the competition is ruthless. The Chiefs knew that they couldn't get a winning bonus point, so they deny the Force of losing one. But it just felt so cruel to see them slot a late penalty and deny them because they have been so close to getting that extra bonus point the past few weeks. And they were so close to what would have been a massive upset win. I think we both tipped them to push the Chiefs, even though it was going to be scrappy. It's another case of being just not quite there against the really good side. So Force, I think, is it like, do we put a pin in their finals hopes now, or can they still make it from here?
Well, they're currently, where's my table?
Currently 10th.
They're last, right? No, 10th.
Yep.
Second last. They've got 4 points out of 6 rounds.
Yeah,
6
it
games
doesn't feel
played.
like enough, does it?
And the Crusaders are currently in 6th place, but they're sharing points with both Crusaders, Tahs, and Highlanders on 14. So, like, halfway of the season next year, I mean, you have to pretty much win all of your games from now on in, and that's just not going to happen.
And you feel like if they did get the bonus point against Highlanders, against the Canes, which they were in a position to do, and the Chiefs, like attacking from 7 feels much more manageable.
Yeah.
Still, I would hate to be the Reds this week. You're coming off a pumping. The Force are desperate after that. That's going to be a big game. Really,
I just hate to be the Reds in general.
Come on.
Last talking point, Lachie. I'm conscious of time, so we need to wrap things up. But next week it's Easter. It's a long weekend. How good we're all hanging for it. Do you know how many Super Rugby games there are next weekend?
Next weekend? No. Another question without notice. There are 3. Oh, it's the extended buys.
Why are we having extended buys during a long weekend as a competition when everyone is, I mean, not everyone, people go away, but people have 3 days to sit at home, put their feet up and watch rugby. Extend it out. Have no buys if you can. Try and just call up the Randwick Colts to play the Force in a whatever. Like, I get that we've got uneven teams in Super Rugby this year, but in terms of like eyeballs on the sport, this is a missed opportunity and it's so frustrating. I did see at halftime in the coverage of the Force game that Stan is like already starting to G up what this next weekend is. The great weekend, they're calling it or something. and
Yep,
that
of
they've got
3
the
games.
Reds Reds force game going into some not A League, some champion soccer game. I don't know. I don't follow any other sports really than rugby, but they're bundling up what they can to make this Easter weekend as blockbuster as possible. And Super Rugby has just dropped the ball by not having coverage for them.
I completely agree with you. This is looking at the fixtures. So you've got Crusaders against the Drua on Friday afternoon our time. That you'd expect that's a comfortable Crusaders win in their last ever game at Apollo Projects. Then Saturday is a doubleheader. It's the Chiefs hosting the Tahs in Hamilton. I think most punters would say the Chiefs do it there. And then Reds v Force. I felt like that they just could have scheduled this a little better. I think they're still going to be good games, but to miss out on the extra eyeballs on a holiday, as you mentioned, criminal in my book.
I understand that it has to happen in terms of logistics because of the way that
not on this weekend.
I don't. Yeah, exactly. I don't understand. Like, I don't have the full schematics of what Super Rugby scheduling is and how it works. And everyone needs 2 buys throughout the season and yada yada yada. But do it last week or this. Like, do it this week. Do it the week after Easter. Don't do it when people are at home watching it. Like, the NRL and the AFL, to their credit, do the best with this type of thing. Like, they'll have games on Friday and Sunday and Monday because they're public holidays. Like, they spread it right out. I think from memory, I don't know. Don't like quote me at this, but I think what they always do on Easter Monday is they have like a bunnies game between, I think it's bunnies and roosters at a core stadium in Sydney. That's always like a double header with the Easter show. So it's always this big thing where you can go to the Easter show, you get a free ticket to the Easter show with your ticket to the game. If you remember, you get access already. And then you go to this blockbuster on Easter Monday and the stadium's half full. Like, that's the best crowd they get all year. And it's on a public holiday and it just sounds perfect. And yet we've got no game on that day. Like, what are we doing?
I don't know. The scheduling, we got so much feedback from our midweek chat around the Wallaroos stuff and scheduling. People asking, oh, this is actually quite good. They seem like they might know what they're talking about. But the Super Rugby schedule for mine, just it hasn't been it. It hasn't been it. Missing out on Friday games in Australia's market for this weekend is a missed opportunity, but it also opens up a bigger conversation. And we probably won't have the whole thing right now, but I want to get your quick thoughts on it. Games on a Thursday or a Friday or a Sunday, those markets that are dominated by AFL and NRL free to air. There's always a Thursday, a Friday, and a Sunday game. Those are so heavily watched because people are home, people are around. Is that something, Thursday or Friday or Sunday games, that you would like to see in an Australian Super Rugby market?
100%. I mean, I must admit, from a selfish perspective, as a podcaster who podcasts at 12 o'clock on a Sunday generally, like, it makes it hard for us to be able to pump out a podcast for our fans. But take that aside, take that hat off. I think, like, it's always been a talking point for the Waratahs. Like, why do they not play more afternoon games? Why do they not play Sundays? And when they do, they get a double-sized crowd. Like, a Sunday afternoon, even if it's not at Allianz, like, take it to Manly Oval, take it to North Sydney Oval, take it to a Shoot Shield game on the hill with your kids. A 2 o'clock kickoff is perfect. They'll fill it up. It'll be fantastic. Those years where Allianz was getting demolished and rebuilt were awesome, going to Leichhardt Oval and all of these types of things. They talk about it not being profitable in terms of the attendance. I think it comes down to actually the hospitality packages, that they find it hard to sell those on a Sunday afternoon as opposed to a Friday night for whatever reason. I just know as an organization, they prefer to play on a Friday for some stupid reason, but it makes so much more sense to go to a 2 o'clock kickoff on a Thursday. Not a Thursday. A 2 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday afternoon would be awesome. Or even just move their games. Like, the Waratahs don't play on Saturday afternoon at home. They only play on Fridays.
Don't clash with club footy. It ties in.
That's okay. That's fair.
That's fair. But that's why you don't do.
True.
That's why you don't do Saturday afternoon. So I don't think anyone's calling for Super Rugby on a Saturday afternoon, especially if you're a local rugby fan. You're engaged in that way, because we're seeing club footy starting up already. QPR's happening. I think next week after the Easter break or whatever's doing this next weekend, we'll see Shoot Shield kick-off as well. Club footy's happening all around the country.
True.
You don't want to clash with that. You want to drive your fan bases to support the Super Rugby franchise that you're attached to, right? So let's see Friday night games. Let's see Sunday games. If you're going to have them on a Saturday, put them at night, because it's just stupid to try and clash these. You're biting your nose off to spite your face if you schedule them in the afternoons. But just thinking a little bit more about when people are free and when people want to engage, it doesn't feel like they've nailed this draw. I know we're being critical, but we're passionate and we want to see more people at games.
That's right.
Show that whatever they're doing isn't currently working.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just a Sydney-based thing. It's not just a Brisbane thing. It's not an Australian thing. Look across the ditch. They're playing Super Rugby games at Eden Park, at whatever Wellington Stadium's now called. I don't think it's Sky Stadium anymore.
Henry or something.
It's empty.
Yeah.
Like, even if there is 15,000 people there, it looks empty. And so even Moana's playing at a suburban ground, North Harbour Stadium, and I mean, they can't get the bloody lights on for them, but there's hardly anyone there anyway. Like, it's just, it doesn't look good as from a product. Like, we're always competing that Super Rugby is the best comp in the world, and, you know, you compete with whatever's going on in the Northern Hemisphere. For Northern Hemisphere, South African fans to turn on and watch Super Rugby with no one in the stands, like, it's an easy target. I mean, actually, maybe South Africa's not a good example. You turn on some of those URC games and there's literally 6,000 people there.
If it's a European team coming down, they're like, oh,
yeah, like in Europe or the Prem or whatever, it's a different story. France.
Yeah. And like it's good that you mentioned Moana, because that's a really interesting tidbit. If you missed it, that Moana against the Highlanders game, Highlanders getting up 39-19 from memory, but the lights went out. They could not broadcast it properly. So we ended up seeing, as you mentioned just off air before we got started, Moana ended up live streaming the whole game, and there was a very familiar face giving us commentary.
Yeah, from Perth. Ben O'Keefe, who was on the touchline in Perth, was giving a few pointers in the comms on Facebook. That's offside. That's forward pass. It's like, come on, Ben. You get it wrong when you're on the field. Let's not add your 2 cents when you're on the sideline or in another country.
I think it's good that he sort of lumped in to try and give context to the situations, but he certainly made himself a target. He's pretty tough online, though. He's tough online and he gets away with it. So that was great to see them continue after just some disruptions. The Blues got a comfortable win. I think it was 40 points to 19 at the end of the day against the Fijian Drua. 40 points to 15 after it was pretty tight at halftime, 14-12. So currently the Canes and the Blues atop the ladder at the moment. Brumbies and Reds still feeling it out, but hunting and closing in are the Chiefs and the, Crusaders that are currently in 6th. So danger stations, the Kiwis starting to twist the knife. We're getting a lot of feedback online, Mitch, after we called for a Kiwi team to be cut. Yes, it was in jest. Stop sending me threats. We know we're taking the piss.
But really, let's cut one.
Yeah, let's cut one.
For the sake of the competition. Let's go back to 10.
Yeah, let's move Moana to Eden Park. Blues can go.
Yep, easy. All right, thanks. Everyone's getting this part of the podcast. We'll be back next week with our wrap-up of Super Rugby Pacific round, what are we up to, 8? Whatever it is. Round 8. And, go Tahs. Might be an easy pod with only 3 games, but it'll be. Enjoy your Easter break, everyone.
Yep, stay safe. Make sure you sign up to Extra Time. Subscribe for extra content over there. Make sure you're following us on the socials, Instagram, Twitter, where we do most of our very good work. And, have a look for all those extra goodies. Until then, bye.
Bye.
We're not going to France for the croissants.